Did you enjoy your birthday dinner, Mom? My son's voice came from behind me. Casual, almost cheerful. I froze with my hand still resting on the kitchen counter. Birthday dinner. I turned slowly, looking at him standing there in the doorway, his car keys dangling from one finger, his jacket already on like he was halfway out of my life again. I paused. It was fine. That was when she walked in behind him. Romy, my daughter-in-law. Her heels clicked softly against the hardwood floor, each step precise, controlled. She didn't look at me at first. She went straight to the fridge, opened it, scanned the shelves like she was inspecting something she owned. Then, without even turning fully toward me, she said it. You could at least pretend to be useful, you know. Her tone was light, almost bored, but the words, they landed heavier than anything I had heard in years. I felt something shift inside my chest. Not break. Not yet. Just shift. My son chuckled under his breath, like she'd made a harmless joke. I didn't laugh. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, feeling the silence stretch between us. Romy finally turned, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. Her eyes swept over me slowly, from my worn sweater to my slippers, to the faint tremor in my hands I couldn't quite control these days. Then she smiled. Not kindly. You're a useless burden, Myrtle. You know that, right? There it was. Clear. Simple. Final. No raised voice. No anger. Just truth as she saw it. For a moment, the room felt too small, like the walls had leaned in just enough to hear it better. My son didn't stop her. He didn't correct her. He didn't even look surprised. He just shifted his weight and glanced at his watch. I nodded once. Slowly. I see, I said. And that was all. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just turned back to the sink and picked up the dish I'd been holding. Because after 71 years of living, you learn something. It's not the loud words that hurt the most. It's the quiet ones people mean. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end, and tell me where you're watching from. I've learned that sometimes, the farther a story travels, the more truth it carries. That night, after they left, the house fell into a silence that felt different. Not peaceful, not even lonely. Just empty in a way that echoed. The dining table was still set. 3 plates. 1 untouched. Mine. The candles had burned down low, wax pooling around their bases like something that had tried to hold its shape, and failed. I moved slowly, clearing the table piece by piece. The fork. The glass. The napkin she had barely used. Everything was exactly where it should have been. Except something wasn't. I couldn't name it yet. But I could feel it. It hadn't always been like this. There was a time when birthdays meant something in this house. When my husband, God, I still caught myself expecting to hear his footsteps, would wake up early just to make coffee before I did. He used to hum while he moved around the kitchen. Off-key. Always off-key. But warm. Everything about him was warm. That was 3 years ago. Before the hospital room. Before the machines. Before the quiet that followed me home and never really left. After he passed, things changed. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just gradually. Like a slow leak you don't notice until the damage is already done. At first, Wade, my son, called every day. Then every few days. Then once a week. Then, whenever it was convenient. When he and Romy started helping me with things, I thought it was kindness. Mom, you shouldn't worry about bills anymore. Mom, let us handle the accounts. Mom, it's too much for you. I remember feeling grateful. Relieved, even. After all, I wasn't getting any younger. And numbers, they blurred a little more these days than they used to. So I let them. I let them take over the online banking. I let them set up automatic payments. I let them tell me what I needed and what I didn't. It felt like trust. It felt like family. But somewhere along the way, something changed. I just didn't see it clearly. Not yet. The morning after my birthday, I woke up earlier than usual. The house was still. Too still. I sat at the edge of my bed for a long time, my hands folded in my lap, staring at the soft light coming through the curtains. You're a useless burden. The words didn't echo loudly. They didn't need to. They just stayed. Settled. Like dust. I made my way to the kitchen and poured myself a cup of coffee. Black. I used to take it with cream. But that felt like a small luxury I didn't allow myself anymore. Funny how that happens. You don't even remember when you decided something was too much. You just stop. I opened the cabinet where I kept my medications. There were fewer bottles than there should have been. I'd stretched them out. Skipped a dose here. Cut one in half there. Just to make them last longer. Because things had been tight. That's what I told myself. Just a rough patch. Things will even out. Don't be a burden. I let out a small breath and closed the cabinet. Then I walked to the living room and sat down in my usual chair, the one by the window. From there, I could see the mailbox. I watched it for a long time. Waiting. Not for anything specific. Just waiting. It was strange. My son had a good job. A very good job. I'd seen the car he drove. The watch on his wrist. The vacations they posted about. Beaches, resorts, places I'd only ever seen in magazines. And yet, I was counting pills. Turning off lights to save electricity. Wearing the same coat through winter because buying a new one felt unnecessary. I frowned slightly. That didn't make sense. It didn't fit. Not completely. A thought crossed my mind then. Small. Quiet. But persistent. What if? No. I shook my head gently. That wasn't fair. They were helping me. They said they were helping me. Still, I stood up slowly and walked toward the small desk in the corner of the room. The one I hadn't used much lately. There was a folder there. Thin. Too thin. I opened it. Inside were a few old bank statements. Nothing recent. Because everything had gone paperless. Easier, Romy had said. More efficient. I ran my fingers over the pages. Numbers. Dates. Amounts. It all looked normal. From back then. Before. I closed the folder and stood there for a moment, staring at nothing. Then I turned my head slightly, toward the kitchen. Toward the counter where my phone Saturday. You're a useless burden. My hand tightened just a little. Not enough to shake. Just enough to feel it. I walked over slowly and picked up the phone. The screen lit up, reflecting my face back at me. Older than I remembered, but clearer than I'd felt in a long time. Maybe it was time to understand exactly what that word meant. Burden. I sat down at the table, the phone still in my hand. For a moment, I hesitated. Not because I was afraid, but because, once you start looking for the truth, you don't always get to choose what you find. Still, I opened the banking app. Or at least, I tried to. Password incorrect. I blinked. Tried again. Slower this time. Careful. Password incorrect. A small pause. A quiet breath. That was new. And just like that, something inside me went very, very still. I didn't panic. I didn't call. I didn't rush to fix it. I just sat there, staring at the screen. Because for the first time, I wasn't confused. I was paying attention. And deep down, I already knew. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And this time, I was going to find out exactly what it was. I didn't try the password a third time. There was no point. Instead, I set the phone down carefully on the table, like it was something fragile. Or dangerous. Maybe both. For a long moment, I just sat there. Listening. The refrigerator humming. A car passing outside. The quiet creak of the house settling. Everything sounded normal. And that was the problem. For the past 2 years, I had been living as if everything was normal. That was what I told myself. When I skipped refilling a prescription because the copay felt too high. When I started buying the cheaper brand of coffee, then eventually stopped buying it at all. When I wore the same winter coat, even when the lining had started to fray at the cuffs. Be practical, Myrtle, I would whisper to myself. Don't be a burden. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. 2 years. That was about the time Wade had insisted on helping with my finances. Mom, you've done enough. Let us take care of this. I could still hear his voice. Warm, reassuring, familiar. I had trusted that voice my entire life. At first, nothing seemed different. The bills were paid. The lights stayed on. The house stayed warm. That was enough for me. I didn't question anything beyond that. But now that I thought about it, there were small things. Small enough to ignore at the time. Mom, you don't need to send money to the church anymore. We'll handle your donations. Mom, I canceled a few subscriptions you weren't really using. Mom, it's better if we consolidate everything into one account. Easier to manage. Easier. That word again. I opened my eyes and looked at the phone. Still sitting there. Still locked. I stood up slowly and walked back to the kitchen. The sunlight had shifted slightly, casting a different angle across the counter. It caught the edge of the fruit bowl. 2 apples and a banana that had gone a little too soft. I picked up one of the apples, turning it in my hand. I used to keep this bowl full. Fresh fruit every week. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Now, I bought just enough. Just what I needed. No waste. No extras. I set the apple back down. It didn't match. None of it matched. Wade had a good life. I had seen it. Not in person, not often. But enough. Photos on his phone. Stories he told in passing. Dinner reservations at places I couldn't pronounce. Trips out of state, sometimes out of the country. New furniture. Renovations. Plans for more. And me? I was measuring out pills. Turning off lights. Counting dollars. I walked back to the table and sat down again. This time, I pulled open the drawer beside me. Inside were old papers. Receipts. Notes. Things I hadn't looked at in months. I started going through them. Slowly. Carefully. Electric bill. Paid. Water bill. Paid. Insurance. Paid. Everything looked fine. On the surface. But then I noticed something. A pattern. The balances. They were lower than I remembered. Not dramatically. Not enough to cause alarm right away. But steadily. Consistently. Like something was being siphoned. I stopped flipping through the papers. My hands rested on the stack. Still. You're a useless burden. I let the words settle again. This time, they felt different. Less like an insult. More like justification. If I was a burden, then maybe, in her mind, this was reasonable. I reached for the phone again. This time, I didn't try to log in. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts. There it was. The bank. I hovered over the number for a second. Not hesitating. Just acknowledging that once I made this call, things would change. I pressed it. The line rang twice before a woman answered. Thank you for calling First Valley Bank. How can I assist you today? Her voice was polite, neutral, uninvolved. I cleared my throat slightly. Hi, yes. My name is Myrtle Hayes. I'm calling about my account. Of course, Ms. Hayes. Can you verify? She went through the questions. Name, address, last 4 digits. I answered each one calmly, steadily. Thank you. How can I help you today? I glanced at the phone in my hand. At the reflection on the screen. I'm having trouble accessing my online account, I said. I see. We can definitely help with that. Have you tried resetting your password? Yes, I said softly. It didn't work. All right. Let me take a look at your profile here. I could hear typing on the other end. Fast. Efficient. Then a pause. Just a second. But I noticed it. Ms. Hayes, she said, her tone shifting slightly. It looks like there have been some recent changes to your account settings. My fingers tightened just a little around the phone. What kind of changes? I asked. It appears that the primary contact email and phone number were updated about 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. That would have been just before my birthday. I didn't make those changes, I said. My voice didn't rise. Didn't shake. Another pause. Longer this time. All right, she said carefully. In that case, I would strongly recommend that you come into a branch in person so we can review everything with you securely. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yes, I said. I think that would be best. We ended the call shortly after. I set the phone down again. This time, I didn't stare at it. I looked out the window instead. At the mailbox. At the quiet street. At the life I thought I understood. 3 weeks ago, they changed the access. I exhaled slowly. So that was it. Not a mistake. Not confusion. Not age. A decision. And suddenly, everything felt very clear. I wasn't a burden. I was convenient. And that was something I could do something about. I didn't call wait. Not that day. Not the next one either. Instead, I woke up early the following morning, dressed slowly, and chose a coat I hadn't worn in a while. It still fit. A little loose around the shoulders. But warm. The bank opened at 9. I arrived at 8:47. Old habits. Your generation learns to arrive early, especially when something matters. The building looked the same as it always had. Glass doors, clean floors, a quiet kind of order. I stood outside for a moment, watching my reflection faintly in the glass. Gray hair, straight posture, eyes that looked more awake than they had in a long time. Then I stepped inside. Good morning, the receptionist said with a polite smile. Good morning, I replied. My name is Myrtle Hayes. I called yesterday about my account. She nodded, typed something quickly, then gestured toward a seating area. Someone will be with you shortly, Ms. Hayes. I sat down, hands folded neatly in my lap, just like I used to during church services years ago. Still, quiet, observing. People came and went. A young couple discussing a mortgage. A man in a suit checking his watch every few seconds. A woman filling out forms, her pen tapping nervously against the paper. Life moving normally. After a few minutes, a man approached. Mid-40s, clean cut, calm expression. Ms. Hayes, he said. I looked up. Yes. I'm Daniel. Why don't you come with me? His office was small, organized. A desk, 2 chairs, a computer screen already awake. I sat down across from him. He didn't rush, didn't make unnecessary conversation, just opened my file and began. So, he said gently, I understand you're having trouble accessing your account. Yes. And you mentioned you didn't authorize recent changes? That's correct. He nodded once, then turned the screen slightly toward himself. His fingers moved across the keyboard. Click, scroll, pause, then another pause. Longer this time. I'm going to ask you a few questions, Ms. Hayes, he said, just to make sure we're looking at everything correctly. Of course. Do you currently share access to your account with anyone? A family member, perhaps? I held his gaze. Yes, I said. My son, Wade Hayes. He nodded again. And, has he had full access? Login credentials? Authorization to make changes? I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know, but because saying it out loud made it real. Yes, I said finally. I trusted him to help manage things. Daniel didn't react. Professionals rarely do. But I noticed the way he clicked into another section. Deeper this time. All right, he said. I'm going to walk you through a few things I'm seeing here. I straightened slightly in my chair. About 3 weeks ago, he continued, your account's primary contact information was changed. Email and phone number. I was told that yesterday. Yes. And shortly after that, a secondary user was granted extended permissions. Extended. I repeated. Yes. The ability to initiate transfers, adjust limits, things typically restricted. I felt my fingers press lightly into the armrest. Who was that user? I asked. He glanced at the screen, then back at me. Romy Hayes. Of course. I nodded once. No surprise. Not anymore. There's more, he said carefully. I didn't move. Go on. He turned the monitor slightly this time, just enough for me to see the lines of data, numbers, dates, transfers. Over the past 18 months, he said, there have been regular withdrawals and transfers from your account. I leaned forward slightly. Not large enough individually to trigger alerts, he continued, but consistent. How consistent? I asked. Every 2 weeks. Sometimes weekly. My breath stayed even. And the total? I asked. He hesitated. Just for a moment. Approximately $87,000. The number didn't hit me all at once. It didn't feel real enough to. 87,000. I sat back slowly. Hands still. Face calm. That's a lot of groceries, I said quietly. Daniel didn't smile, but something in his expression softened. Yes, he said. It is. I looked at the screen again. At the rows of transactions. Each one small. Reasonable. Easy to miss. But together, they told a different story. A deliberate one. They were careful, I said. More to myself than to him. Yes, he replied. Silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. After a moment, he spoke again. Ms. Hayes, I need to ask. Were you aware of these transfers? I shook my head. No. And did you authorize your daughter-in-law to have that level of access? No, another nod. More typing. Then we have a situation, he said. I looked at him. Steady. What kind of situation? I asked. He met my eyes this time. Direct. Professional. Clear. One where we need to secure your account immediately. Secure. I let the word settle. Not fix. Not reverse. Secure. All right, I said. He began explaining the steps. Freezing access. Removing permissions. Flagging transactions. His voice was calm. Measured. But I wasn't. Really listening to the details. Not yet. Because something else had already become clear. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a system. Built slowly. Quietly. Right under my roof. I thought about the dinners. The conversations. The way Romy would glance at her phone, then at me. The way Wade avoided certain topics. The way I had started to feel smaller. Not by accident. By design. I'd like to proceed, I said. Daniel nodded. Are you sure? I looked at him. Really looked this time. 71 years of living. 38 years of marriage. A lifetime of building something. Only to hand it over in good faith. Yes, I said. My voice didn't shake. I'm sure. He turned back to the computer. Started typing again. And as he did, I felt something shift inside me. Not pain. Not anger. Clarity. The kind that comes when the last piece of the puzzle finally falls into place. They hadn't just taken my money. They had taken my trust. And that was something I wasn't going to let them keep. Daniel didn't rush me. He gave me time. Time to sit there, to breathe, to let the weight of what I had just seen settle into something solid, something real. I'm going to disable all external access to your account, he said, his fingers already moving across the keyboard. That includes any secondary users. I nodded. That's fine. And we'll issue new credentials. Only you will have access moving forward. Only me. It was such a simple phrase. But it felt unfamiliar. For the past 2 years, nothing had really been only mine. Not decisions. Not finances. Not even small things like when to pay a bill or how much to spend on groceries. I had handed all of that over. Willingly. Done, Daniel said quietly. Just like that. A few clicks. A few confirmations. And the system they had built, the one that ran quietly in the background of my life, was gone. I sat there for a moment longer. Not moving. Is there anything else you'd like to review? He asked. I looked at the screen again. At the long list of transactions. At the pattern I hadn't seen, or maybe hadn't wanted to see. Yes, I said. I want copies of everything. He nodded. Of course. Every transfer. Every change. Every authorization. His eyes met mine for just a second. And this time, there was something there. Not pity. Respect. I'll prepare a full report for you, he said. Thank you. When I stepped out of the bank, the air felt different. Cooler. Sharper. Not because anything had changed outside, but because something had changed in me. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I sat in my car for a few minutes, both hands resting on the steering wheel. $87,000. I said it again in my mind. Slowly. Not all at once. Not violently. But deliberately. That kind of number doesn't disappear by accident. I thought about Wade. About the little boy who used to run into my arms after school, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. Mom, guess what I learned today? I thought about the man he had become. The one who stood in my kitchen and said nothing. And Romy, always composed, always polite when it mattered. You're a useless burden. I let the words sit there again. But this time, they didn't sting the same way. Now I understood them. They weren't said in anger. They were said with certainty. When I got home, the house was just as I had left it. Quiet. Still. I placed my purse on the table and took off my coat slowly, hanging it by the door. Everything felt measured, intentional. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I thought I would feel something stronger. Anger. Sadness. But instead, there was just clarity. I sat down at the table again. The same spot. The same chair. Only now, it felt different. I reached for the folder Daniel had given me before I left. A temporary summary. The full report would take a day or two. I opened it. Pages. Numbers. Dates. I traced one line with my finger. A transfer. $200. Another. $350. Another. $120. Small. Reasonable. Invisible. Until they weren't. I flipped another page. And then another. Each one told the same story. Careful. Consistent. Planned. I closed the folder gently. For a long time, I just sat there. Looking at nothing. Listening to the quiet. Then I stood up and walked to the cabinet. The one with my medications. I opened it. Looked inside. Half-empty bottles. Carefully spaced doses. I reached in and picked one up. Turned it over in my hand. I had been saving these. Stretching them. Making them last. Because I believed I needed to. Because I believed I didn't have enough. I set the bottle back down. Closed the cabinet. No more, I said softly. Not to anyone else. Just to myself. That afternoon, my phone rang. I didn't need to look at the screen to know who it was. Wait. I let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. Then I answered. Hi, Mom, he said. His voice sounded normal. Careful. Hi, Wade. A pause. How are you feeling today? I almost smiled. I'm fine, I said. Another pause. Slightly longer. Listen, about last night, he started. I waited. But he didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he shifted. Changed direction. Hey. Have you tried using your bank app today? Romy said there might be an issue with it. There it was. I leaned back slightly in my chair. I did try, I said. Oh, okay. Did it work? No, silence. Then a small laugh. Forced. Yeah, sometimes those things glitch. I can take a look at it later if you want. I let the silence stretch. Just for a second. Then I said, very calmly. That won't be necessary. Another pause. What do you mean? I glanced at the folder on the table. At the pages inside. I went to the bank this morning, I said. Nothing on the other end. Not even breathing. And, he asked finally, they helped me fix the problem. My voice was steady. Even. What kind of problem? He asked. I didn't answer right away. Because now, I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. And the next part wasn't about finding the truth. It was about what I was going to do with it. What kind of problem? Wade's voice was still on the line. Careful now. Quieter than before. I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence sit between us, just long enough for it to feel uncomfortable. The kind, I said slowly, where someone changed my account access without telling me. Nothing. Then, Mom, I can explain. I'm sure you can. My voice didn't rise. Didn't harden. It just stayed steady. Another pause. I could hear him breathing now. Shallow. Thinking. It's not what you think, he said. I almost smiled. That sentence. People always say it like it changes something. Then tell me what it is, I replied. More silence. Longer this time. I was just trying to make things easier for you, he said finally. You know that. You said yourself you didn't want to deal with all the bills and numbers anymore. I looked down at my hands resting on the table. Still steady. I said I trusted you to help me. I said. That's what I did. No, I said softly. That's not what you did. The difference hung there. Clear. Sharp. I didn't authorize Romy to have access. I continued. I didn't authorize changes to my contact information. And I certainly didn't authorize $87,000 in transfers. The number landed. Heavy. This time. He didn't respond right away. Mom, he said after a moment, his voice lower now. You're overreacting. That money wasn't just taken. It was used for things. For the house. For expenses. For your life, I said. Silence. For your trips, I continued. For your dinners. For your renovations. Each word came out calm. Measured. You never asked me, I added. We didn't think you'd mind, he said quickly. I mean, it's family. It's all going to come back to us anyway, right? We're just managing things early. I closed my eyes for a second. Managing things early. That's an interesting way to describe it, I said. Mom, please don't make this into something bigger than it is, he said. We've been taking care of you. Paying your bills. Keeping everything running. I've been skipping medication, I said. The words came out quiet. Flat. That stopped him. What? He said. I've been cutting pills in half to make them last longer, I continued. Turning off lights. Counting groceries. Silence. I thought money was tight, I said. Another pause. You never told me that, he said, softer now. I opened my eyes. Looked straight ahead. You never asked. That landed differently. Not louder. Just deeper. On the other end of the line, I could hear something shift. Not guilt. Not yet. Discomfort. Mom, we can fix this, he said quickly. Okay. We'll sort it out. I'll talk to Romy. We'll transfer everything back. There's no need to. It's already been handled, I said. What do you mean? I went to the bank this morning. Silence again. But this time heavier. I removed all access, I continued. Yours. Hers. Everything. A sharp inhale. You what? I secured my account. Mom, you can't just. I can, I said. And for the first time in the conversation, there was something else in my voice. Not anger. Authority. I already did. He didn't respond right away. Then, do you have any idea what kind of mess this creates? He said, frustration slipping through now. We have payments set up. Transfers. Things that depend on that account. Yes, I said. I saw them. Another pause. Mom, you should have talked to me first. I let that sit for a moment. Then I said, I did. Silence. Last night, I continued. In my own kitchen. He didn't answer. You chose not to listen, I said. The line went quiet. Not disconnected. Just quiet. After a few seconds, he spoke again. Softer now. Careful. What do you want to do? He asked. I leaned back in my chair. Looked at the folder again. At the pages filled with numbers that used to mean nothing, and now meant everything. I want time, I said. For what? To think, I replied. Another pause. And until then, he asked. Until then, I said, nothing changes. What does that mean? It means, I said slowly, you don't touch anything that belongs to me. Silence. And Romy, he asked. I let out a small breath. Romy already said what she thinks of me. I said. I didn't need to repeat it. She doesn't need access to anything else. No response. Just breathing on the other end. Mom, he started. But this time, I didn't let him finish. I'll call you when I'm ready, I said. And then, I ended the call. The house went quiet again. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt still, like something had finally stopped moving long enough for me to see it clearly. I placed the phone down on the table, next to the folder. For a long moment, I just sat there. Then I reached over, opened the folder again, and turned to the next page. Because now, this wasn't about what they had done. It was about what I was going to do next. I didn't rush through the pages. Not anymore. Before, I would have skimmed, trusted, closed the folder, and told myself everything was fine. But now, I read every line. Slowly, transfer by transfer, date by date, patterns started to form. Not just numbers. Behavior. Every Friday, late afternoon, between 3 o'clock and 5 p.m. Small amounts. $120, $250, $400. Never enough to trigger concern. Never enough to feel urgent. But always there. I traced one transaction with my finger. Then another. Then another. 18 months. That's how long it had been happening. Not a mistake. Not a one-time decision. A system. I leaned back slightly in my chair. 18 months ago, that was around the time Romy started coming over more often. Just checking in on you, Myrtle. She always said my name like that. Soft. Polite. Distant. She would stand in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, occasionally glancing at me. Observing. Measuring. At the time, I thought she was just adjusting. Trying to fit into the family. Now, it looked different. Everything looked different. I turned another page. There were larger transfers too. Less frequent. But still there. $2,000. $3,500. Labeled vaguely. Home improvement. Shared expense. Transfer. No details. No explanation. Just enough to look legitimate. I exhaled slowly. They were careful. I said again, under my breath. Not reckless. Not emotional. Careful. That kind of behavior doesn't come from impulse. It comes from planning. I closed the folder for a moment and rested my hand on top of it. Then something else came to mind. The credit card. The one Wade had insisted I keep for emergencies. Mom, it's easier this way. Just use this if you need anything. We'll handle the rest. I hadn't used it much. Maybe groceries once or twice. Gas, rarely. I stood up and walked to the small drawer by the counter. Opened it. There it was. The card sat neatly in its place. Untouched. I picked it up. Turned it over. Still valid. Still active. But something about it felt wrong now. I walked back to the table and sat down again. Then I picked up my phone. This time, I didn't try the app. I called the number on the back of the card. It rang once. Twice. Thank you for calling customer service. How may I assist you today? My name is Myrtle Hayes, I said. I'd like to review recent activity on my card. Of course, Ms. Hayes. Let me just verify your identity. The questions came. Simple. Routine. I answered each one. Thank you. How can I help you today? I'd like to know the last 10 transactions on this card. Hey. Pause. Typing. All right. I'm seeing several charges here, the agent said. Would you like me to go through them one by one? Yes. Okay. On the third, there's a $420 charge at Westfield Furniture. I frowned slightly. I hadn't been to a furniture store. Not in years. Next, on the fifth, $180 at La Mesa Bistro. I closed my eyes for a second. Dinner. On the ninth, $260 at Coastal Spa. On the 12th, $95 at Greenleaf Market. That one could have been me. But the rest? Would you like me to continue? The agent asked. Yes, I said. More charges. More places. More amounts. Each one, small enough to explain. But together, a lifestyle. Not mine. I let the list finish. Ms. Hayes, do you recognize these transactions? The agent asked. I opened my eyes. Looked down at the card in my hand. No, I said. A pause. All right, she replied carefully. Would you like to dispute these charges? I didn't answer right away. Because this wasn't just about charges. This was about something bigger. Still, this card, I said slowly. Is it linked to my main account? Yes, it is. Who has access to use it? Another pause. Typing. It appears there is an authorized user listed. I already knew the answer. Who? I asked anyway. Romy Hayes. Of course. I nodded slightly. Remove her, I said. Immediately. Yes. More typing. Done, the agent said. Would you like to proceed with disputing the recent transactions? I looked out the window. At the quiet street. At the life that had been quietly rearranged around me. Not yet, I said. All right. The option will remain available if you change your mind. Thank you. The call ended. I set the phone down gently, placed the card beside it. For a long moment, I just sat there. No anger, no shock, just understanding. They hadn't just taken money from one place. They had built access everywhere. Quietly, carefully. Bank account, credit card, permissions, control. All while I sat in this same chair, thinking I was being taken care of. I let out a slow breath. No more, I said again. This time, it sounded different. Not like a promise, like a decision. I reached for the folder again, opened it, turned to the next section. Because now, I wasn't just looking at what they did. I was starting to see how they did it. And that was going to matter. I didn't stop that day. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. I moved through the house differently. Not like someone living in it. Like someone studying it. The kitchen, the living room, the small desk in the corner. Everywhere I looked, I started noticing patterns. The mail. That was the first thing. I walked to the front door and opened it slowly. The mailbox sat just a few steps away. Same as always. I checked it. Bills. Flyers. A bank envelope. I frowned slightly. I hadn't received a bank envelope in months. Everything had gone paperless. Easier, Romy had said. I turned the envelope over in my hand. Still sealed. I brought it inside and placed it on the table. Sat down. Opened it carefully. Inside. A statement. Printed. Detailed. Not digital. Not filtered. Real. I ran my fingers over the page. The balance. Lower than I remembered. But that wasn't what caught my attention. It was the address. Not mine. My name was there. But the address beneath it was different. I stared at it for a long moment. That explained it. Why I hadn't been receiving statements. Why everything had felt distant. They didn't just take access. They redirected it. I set the paper down slowly. Careful. Deliberate. Then I reached for a pen. I wrote the address down. Because this wasn't something I was going to forget. Later that afternoon, I walked into the hallway closet. There were boxes there. Old ones. Things I hadn't touched in years. Photo albums. Documents. Pieces of a life that used to feel stable. I pulled one box down carefully. Set it on the floor. Opened it. Inside. Folders. Old records. I started going through them. Insurance papers. Tax returns. Bank documents. Back when everything came to me directly. Back when nothing was hidden. I compared one of the old statements to the one I had just opened. Same format. Same structure. Different control. I sat there on the floor for a long time. Not rushing. Just connecting things. Piece by piece. 18 months ago. That was when the statements stopped coming. That was when everything moved online. That was when I stopped seeing things clearly. And that was when they started. I stood up slowly. My knees protested a little. But I ignored it. I carried the box. Back to the table. Set it down. Then I took out my phone. Not to call Wade. Not to call Romy. Not yet. Instead, I started taking pictures. Each document. Each statement. Each detail. Click. Pause. Click. Because memory fades. But records don't. As the light outside began to fade, the house grew quieter. The kind of quiet that lets you hear your own thoughts. I sat back in my chair again. The folder on one side. The old box on the other. 2 timelines. Before. And after. And right in the middle. The moment I trusted them. I thought about that version of myself. The one who said, of course. Take care of it. She wasn't foolish. She was tired. Tired of handling everything alone after her husband was gone. Tired of numbers. Tired of decisions. She thought she was choosing peace. But she was choosing absence. And someone else filled that space. Quietly, I reached for the statement again. Looked at the address. Then I reached for my phone. This time, I opened my contacts. Scrolled. Found a name I hadn't called in a long time. Elaine, legal. My hand hovered for a second. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. Because once I made this call, there would be no going back to before. I pressed it. The line rang. Once. Twice. Then, Myrtle, a familiar voice answered. I let out a small breath. Hi, Elaine. A pause. Then warmth. Well, it's been a while. Everything okay? I looked at the table. At the documents. At the pieces finally coming together. No, I said. Simple. Honest. I think I need your help. Silence. But not empty. Listening. All right, she said. Tell me what's going on. I didn't rush. I didn't dramatize. I just told her. About the account. The access changes. The transfers. The credit card. The address. Everything. When I finished, There was a pause on the line. Longer this time. Then she spoke. Myrtle, do you have documentation of all this? I looked at the table. Yes, I said. Good, she replied. Her tone had changed. More focused now. More precise. Don't confront them directly, she said. Not yet. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I wasn't planning to. Good, she said. Because if what you're describing is accurate, this isn't just a family misunderstanding. I didn't say anything. I already knew. This is something we need to handle carefully, she continued. Step by step. Carefully. That word again. But this time, it belonged to me. I understand, I said. We'll set up a time to go through everything together, she added. In the meantime, don't make any more changes. Just observe. Observe. I could do that. I had been doing that. Just not consciously. All right, I said. We ended the call shortly after. I placed the phone down. The room felt different now. Not heavier. Sharper. More defined. I looked at the documents one more time. Then I closed the folder. Because now, this wasn't just about understanding what happened. It was about proving it. And I was ready to be very, very careful. The next morning, I didn't reach for the folder right away. I didn't call Elaine. I didn't check the phone. I made coffee. The same way I always had. Slow. Measured. Water first. Then the grounds. 2 scoops. Not 1. Not 3. For a moment, it felt like any other morning. But it wasn't. Because now, I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. And when you know something like that, you don't rush. You prepare. I carried the coffee to the table and sat down. The folder was still there. The box beside it. I didn't open them. Not yet. Instead, I reached for a small notebook. One I used to keep grocery lists. Appointments. Little reminders. Today it became something else. I opened to a blank page. At the top, I wrote one word. Timeline. Then I started filling it in. 18 months ago, online access changed. 17 months ago, first pattern of withdrawals. 3 weeks ago, contact information updated. Yesterday, account locked. Each line simple, clear, no emotion, just facts. Because facts don't argue. I paused, took a sip of coffee. Then I turned the page. Another word. Access. Under it, I wrote. Bank account, credit card, mailing address, login credentials, everything they touched. Everything they controlled. I looked at the list for a long moment. It wasn't random. It was complete. By mid-morning, I had everything laid out on the table. Old statements. New statements. Photos on my phone. Notes in the notebook. It didn't look like chaos anymore. It looked like structure. And that made it easier to see what was missing. Proof of intent. Not just what they did, but how they planned it. I picked up one of the statements again. Looked at the address. Then I reached for my phone. This time, I opened the map. Typed it in. The location appeared. A house. Not mine. Not unfamiliar either. I stared at the screen for a second longer. Then I closed the app. I didn't need to see more. I already understood enough. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message. Romy. I looked at the name on the screen. Didn't open it right away. Then I tapped it. Hey Myrtle, just checking if everything's okay with the bank app. Wade said you were having trouble. I can stop by later and help you fix it. Smiling face with smiling eyes. I read it once. Then again. The smiley face at the end felt out of place. I didn't reply. I locked the phone and set it down. Because now, I understood something important. They didn't know yet. Not completely. They knew something had changed. But not how much. Not what I had seen. Not what I had already done. And that mattered. In the afternoon, I made another call. Not to Elaine this time. To the bank. Ms. Hayes, how can I assist you today? Yes, I said. I'd like to confirm that all previous access points have been removed. Let me check that for you. Typing. Pause. Yes, ma'am. All secondary users have been removed, and your account is currently secured under your name only. Only me. Good, I said. And one more thing, I added. Yes. I'd like to place a temporary freeze on any large transfers. Of course. What limit would you like to set? I thought for a moment. Anything over $500, I said. Understood. I'll put that in place immediately. Thank you. The call ended. Another small step. Quiet. Controlled. Later that evening, I sat by the window again. The same chair. The same view. The mailbox. The street. The stillness. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I was watching. There's a difference. Waiting is passive. Watching is not. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Wait this time. Mom, can we talk? I looked at it. Didn't open it. Then I placed the phone face down on the table. Not yet. Because this part wasn't about reacting. It was about timing. I leaned back slightly and closed my eyes. Everything was in place now. The account secured. The access removed. The documents gathered. The timeline built. And most importantly, I was no longer in the dark. You're a useless burden. I let the words come back one more time. But now, they didn't belong to me. They belonged to them. To the version of me they thought they understood. The one who didn't check. Didn't question. Didn't see. I opened my eyes slowly. Reached for the notebook again. Turned to a new page. And wrote. Next step. I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I added one more line beneath it. Wait. Because sometimes, the strongest move is letting people believe they still have control. I didn't respond to Wade's message that night or the next morning. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I had already said enough. Now, it was their turn to sit in the silence. And silence can be very loud when you're not in control of it. By the third day, the calls started. First, one missed call. Then two. Then three. All from Wade. Romy didn't call. She texted. Hey, just wanted to make sure everything's okay. Did you get my last message? Let me know if you need help with anything. Polite. Careful. Still pretending. I read each message once. Then set the phone down. No reply. Because now, I understood something else. They weren't reaching out to check on me. They were trying to check the situation. What I knew. What I didn't. How much control they still had. And the only way to find that out was through me. On the fourth morning, I made another call. Good morning, Ms. Hayes. Daniel's voice came through. I was actually preparing your full report. Perfect timing, I said. It's ready for pickup, or I can have it sent securely. I'll come in, I replied. Some things you don't trust to be delivered. The bank felt different this time. Not unfamiliar. Just clearer. I wasn't walking in as someone asking for help anymore. I was walking in, knowing exactly what I needed. Daniel greeted me with a nod. No small talk. No unnecessary words. He handed me a folder. Thicker than the last one. Everything is in there, he said. Transaction history, access logs, authorization changes. Logs. That was new. I opened the folder slightly. Just enough to see. Names. Timestamps. IP. Addresses. Not just what was taken, but how. Careful. Detailed. Traceable. Thank you, I said. If you need anything further, he added. I will, I replied. And I meant it. Back home, I didn't sit at the table this time. I cleared a space on the living room floor. Laid everything out. The old documents. The new reports. The notebook. All of it. Side by side. It looked like something else now. Not confusion. Not suspicion. Evidence. I started with the access logs. Scrolling through pages. Login attempts. Successful entries. Changes made. Each one marked with time. Date. Location. I followed the pattern. Evenings. Late. After 10 p.m. That made sense. That was when I usually went to bed. That was when the house was quiet. That was when no one would notice. I turned another page. Device names. Not mine. I don't name my phone Romy's iPhone. I let out a slow breath. Clear. Direct. No assumptions needed. Then came the authorization changes. One entry stood out. 17 months ago. Secondary user added. Romy Hayes. Approved by Wade Hayes. I stared at that line for a long moment. Not because I didn't understand it, but because it confirmed something deeper. This wasn't one person. This was two. Working together. I sat back slowly. The room was quiet again. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt settled. Like everything had finally found its place. My phone buzzed again. I didn't need to look. But I did. Wait. Calling. I let it ring. Then, just before it stopped, I answered. Mom. His voice came quickly this time. Less controlled. We need to talk. I leaned back slightly against the couch. We will, I said. When? Soon. That's not good enough, he said. You've been ignoring me for days. I've been busy, I replied. With what? He asked. I looked down at the documents spread across the floor. Understanding things, I said. A pause. What does that mean? He asked. I didn't answer that. Instead, I asked, are you home right now? He hesitated. Yes. And Romy? She's here. I nodded slightly. Good, I said. Another pause. Why? He asked. I let the silence stretch. Just a little. Then I said, I'll come by this evening. Silence. Mom, what's going on? He asked. I stood up slowly. What should have happened a long time ago, I said. And then, Ended the call. The house was quiet again. But something had changed. Not outside. Inside. The waiting was over. The observing was done. Now, it was time to see how they reacted. When they realized, I wasn't the one in the dark anymore. I didn't bring everything with me. Not all at once. Just the folder. The one that mattered. The rest, I left on the table at home. Neatly arranged. Exactly where I could find it again. Because this wasn't about overwhelming them. It was about precision. The drive to Wade's house took 22 minutes. I knew that. I had made that drive many times before. With casseroles. With birthday gifts. With quiet hopes that I still belonged there. Tonight, I brought something else. Understanding. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light was already on. They were waiting. Of course they were. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment. Hands resting lightly on the steering wheel. No shaking. No hesitation. Just stillness. Then I stepped out. The air was cooler than I expected. I walked up to the door. Knocked once. Not loudly. Just enough. Wade opened it almost immediately. Mom. His face looked different. Tired. Tense. Behind him, I could see Romy standing in the living room. Arms crossed. Watching. I stepped inside. Hi, Wade. No hug. No small talk. Just space. Come sit, he said, gesturing toward the couch. I nodded. Walked in. Sat down. They took their places across from me. Like a meeting. Good. That made things simpler. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Wade leaned forward slightly. Okay. Can you please tell us what's going on? He asked. I placed the folder on the coffee table. Opened it. Slowly. I went to the bank, I said. I know, he replied quickly. You said that. I didn't just fix a password. I continued. That made him pause. Romy shifted slightly in her seat. I reviewed the account, I said. Silence. All of it. Wade exhaled through his nose. Mom, we already talked about this. No, I said gently. We didn't. That stopped him. I slid the first page out of the folder. Placed it on the table. Turned it toward them. $87,000, I said. No emotion. Just the number. Romy's eyes dropped to the page. Then back to me. That's not accurate, she said immediately. I didn't respond to her. I looked at Wade. It's the total of unauthorized transfers over 18 months, I said. Unauthorized, he repeated. Mom, that's not fair. Is it incorrect? I asked. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Silence. That was enough. I placed another page on the table. Access logs, I said. Wade didn't reach for it. Romy did. Her eyes moved quickly. Reading. Calculating. Everyone shares accounts and families, she said. This isn't unusual. I nodded slightly. Access isn't the issue, I said. Then what is? She asked. I met her eyes. Permission. That word stayed in the air. You gave Wade access, she said. That includes me. We're married. I gave Wade permission to help me. I said. I paused. I didn't give either of you permission to take from me. Silence. Wade rubbed his forehead. Mom, you're making this sound worse than it is, he said. We were managing things. For all of us. For all of you, I corrected. Another pause. You didn't ask, I said. We didn't think we needed to, Romy replied. There it was again. That certainty. That belief. I reached into the folder again. Pulled out the statement with the address. Placed it on top. My statements were redirected, I said. Neither of them spoke. You changed my contact information, I continued. Still nothing. You removed my visibility. Wade looked down now. Not at me. At the table. That wasn't about helping, I said. Quiet. That was about control. Romy straightened slightly. You're overthinking this, she said. We simplified things for you. You said you didn't want to deal with it anymore. I nodded. I said I was tired, I replied. I let that sit for a moment. Tired doesn't mean incapable. Silence again. Heavier now. Then Wade spoke. Okay, he said. So what do you want? Straight to it. Good. I closed the folder. Rested my hands on top of it. I've already secured my accounts, I said. Romy's expression changed. Just slightly. What does that mean? She asked. It means you no longer have access, I replied. Wade looked up sharply. All access, he asked. Yes. A beat. What about the scheduled payments? He said. The transfers. They've stopped, I said. Silence. Then, you can't just cut things off like that, Romy said. I looked at her. Calm. I already did. That landed. Not loud, but final. For a moment. No one spoke. Then Wade leaned back slowly. This is a mistake, he said. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, no. And for the first time, they didn't have anything to say back. Wade leaned back. Romy didn't. She stayed exactly where she was. Arms crossed. Eyes on me. Calculating. You're serious, she said. I am. A small silence followed. Not confused. Measured. Then she stood up. Slowly. Walked across the room. Picked up her phone from the counter. I need to make a call, she said. To who? Wade asked. She didn't answer him. She looked at me instead. Because this affects more than just you, she said. I didn't respond. Because that was exactly the point. Sit down, Wade said to her quietly. She hesitated. Then she did. But not because he told her to. Because she realized something. This wasn't something she could talk her way out of quickly. Wade turned back to me. Mom, he said, softer now. Let's just slow down for a second. I'm not rushing, I replied. You are, he said. You're making decisions without thinking about the consequences. I looked at him. I've been thinking about the consequences for 18 months, I said. That stopped him. You didn't notice, he said. No, I replied. I didn't. I let that sit. Then added, but I notice now. Silence. He leaned forward again. Okay. Let's say mistakes were made, he said. Mistakes. I didn't correct him. Not yet. We can fix this, he continued. We can transfer things back, adjust whatever needs adjusting. You already said that, I said. And I mean it, he replied. I don't think you do, I said calmly. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? I opened the folder again. Not to show him something new, but to remind him. I had more. 17 months ago, I said, you approved adding Romy as a secondary user. He didn't deny it. 3 weeks ago, I continued. My contact information was changed. Still nothing. My statements were redirected. A pause. You removed my access before I even realized I needed it. That was just administrative, Romy said quickly. It's not what you're making it out to be. I looked at her. It's exactly what I'm making it out to be, I said. Another silence. Heavier now. Then Wade said something different. Something quieter. Why didn't you come to us sooner? He asked. I held his gaze. Because I didn't know, I said. A pause. And once I did, I went to the bank. He nodded slowly, as if trying to follow something that no longer made sense to him. Okay, he said. So what happens now? That question again. But this time, it sounded different. Less defensive. More uncertain. I closed the folder. Rested my hands on top of it. What happens now, I said, is very simple. They both looked at me. You return what was taken. Silence. Then, that's not possible all at once, Wade said. I didn't say it had to be, I replied. Another pause. But it will be returned, I added. Romy shook her head slightly. This is ridiculous, she said. You're acting like we stole from you. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just said, you did. That landed. Harder than anything else I had said. No, she replied quickly. We used money that was already going to be part of our future. That's not the same thing. I tilted my head slightly. It is, I said. Legally, maybe, she muttered. That caught my attention. Not the words. The direction. Legally. I repeated. Wade looked at her. A quick glance. Too quick. Then back at me. Mom, let's not bring lawyers into this, he said. I didn't respond right away. Because that told me something important. They had already thought about it. I've already spoken to one, I said. Silence. Immediate. Complete. Romy's posture changed. Just slightly. But enough. What? Wade said. I'm not guessing anymore. I continued. I'm documenting. No one spoke. And I've been advised, I added, to be very careful about what I do next. The room felt different now. Not tense. Still. Like something had shifted and settled. You went to a lawyer? Wade asked. His voice wasn't angry. It was surprised. Yes, I said. Mom, that's not necessary, he said. I nodded. It wasn't, I replied. I let that sit for a moment. Until it was. Another silence. Longer. Romy stood up again. This time, she didn't ask. She just walked toward the hallway. This is getting out of hand, she said. I watched her go. Didn't stop her. Didn't need to. Because the conversation wasn't leaving with her. It was staying right here. Between me and my son. Wade looked at me for a long moment. Then he said quietly, I didn't think you'd ever check. There it was. Not an excuse. Not a defense. Just the truth. I nodded once. I know, I said. And that was exactly why I did. Romy didn't come back into the room. I could hear her in the hallway. A drawer opening. A door closing. Her voice, low, sharp, on the phone. Wade didn't move. He sat there across from me, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together like he was trying to hold something in place. I didn't think you'd ever check. His words were still hanging in the air. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just honest. I studied his face. The same face I used to kiss goodnight when he was small. The same eyes that used to look at me like I had all the answers. Somewhere along the way, that look had changed, and I hadn't noticed. I know, I said again. He let out a breath. Long, slow. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said. I didn't interrupt him. It started small, he continued. Just covering things. Then adjusting things. Making it easier. And then, he trailed off. And then you didn't stop, I finished. He nodded. Silence settled between us. Not heavy. Just real. I trusted you, I said. Not accusing. Just stating it. I know. I didn't check because I believed I didn't need to. He looked down at his hands. I know, he said again. That was the thing about trust. You don't feel it when it's there. Only when it's gone. From the hallway, I heard footsteps. Romy reappeared. Her expression was different now. Less certain. Less in control. She didn't sit this time. She stood behind the couch. Arms at her sides. We need to be realistic about this, she said. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on Wade. Realistic, I repeated quietly. Yes, she said. You're talking about returning money that's already been used. That's not something that just happens overnight. I didn't ask for overnight, I said. Then what are you asking for? She pressed. Now I looked at her. For acknowledgement, I said. A pause. For responsibility. Another pause. And for it to stop. Silence. Then she shook her head slightly. You're making this into something bigger than it needs to be, she said. I held her gaze. No, I replied. I'm seeing it exactly as it is. That was the difference now. I wasn't confused. I wasn't unsure. I wasn't asking questions I didn't have answers to. Wade stood up slowly. Okay, he said. His voice had changed. Quieter. Not defensive. Resolved. We'll figure it out, he said. I watched him. Not for the words. For the tone. Because tone tells you what words don't. You will, I said. Not we. You. That landed. He nodded once. I understand. I stood up. Slowly. Picked up the folder. Held it against my side. I'll be in touch, I said. No one tried to stop me. No one followed me to the door. And that told me everything I needed to know. The night air felt cooler when I stepped outside. Or maybe, I just felt it more clearly. I walked to my car. Opened the door. Paused for just a second before getting in. Not because I was unsure, but because I was aware of what had just ended and what had just begun. The drive home was quiet. No radio. No thoughts rushing in. Just space. When I pulled into my driveway, the house looked the same as always. Still. Waiting. But when I stepped inside, it didn't feel the same. It felt mine again. I set the folder back on the table. In the same place it had been before. Only now, it wasn't something I was afraid to open. It was something I understood. I walked into the kitchen. Opened the cabinet. Looked at the medications again. Then, without hesitation, I picked up my phone. Called the pharmacy. Hi, I said. I'd like to refill all my prescriptions. A small pause on the other end. Of course, ma'am. We can have those ready by tomorrow. Thank you. I ended the call. Closed the cabinet. No more stretching. No more waiting. No more making myself smaller to fit someone else's version of what I was worth. I walked back to the living room. Sat down in my chair by the window. Looked out at the street. The mailbox. The quiet. You're a useless burden. I let the words come one last time. And then, I let them go. Because they were never mine to carry. I wasn't a burden. I was the one who built everything they stood on. And now, I was the one deciding what remained. I leaned back in my chair. Closed my eyes for a moment. Not tired. Not defeated. Just done. Done being overlooked. Done being managed. Done being quiet when it mattered. When I opened my eyes again, the room felt still, but not empty. Complete. And for the first time in a long time. So did I?